once again, at this time, we are now currently sailing under the Bridge of Americas. That's right, folks, originally known as the Thatcher Ferry Bridge. This bridge connects the North and South American landmasses. It was completed in 1962 at a cost of 20 million, and at that time it was the only significant road crossing that went over the Panama Canal, of course, until those additional bridges were built. As you look up at this mighty structure, it spans a total length of 5,427 feet, or 1,654 meters. We've got that clearance of 201 feet, or 61 meters. Which does now mean we have officially now entered the canal. So as we have now entered the canal, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue this fascinating journey through the canal, I just want to take a moment to explore the contributions of some of the major players supporting this global maritime crossroads. The first one to mention is a company called Hutchinson Whampoa Limited, and they are part of the C.K. Hutchinson Holdings. Now, why is this significant? Because we're now, as you can see, if you're looking out at the front of the ship, we're coming into some major ports. Now, Hutchinson Whampoa was a Hong Kong-based conglomerate with a rich history dating back to the 19th century. They formed two pioneering companies, the Hong Kong and the Whampoa Dock. That was actually founded in 1863, and then the Hutchinson International was founded in 1877. Both became global powerhouses, operating in ports, property, telecommunications, retail, and infrastructure worldwide. Now, while the Hutchinson Whampoa doesn't operate the Panama Canal itself, that responsibility belongs to the Panama Canal Authority. Its involvement in the canal zone is actually hugely significant. They have various different subsidiary companies and Panama Ports companies. Therefore, Hutchinson operates two vital ports at either end of the canal. The first one directly in front of us, which is the port of Balboa, here on the Pacific side, and the port of Cristobal on the Atlantic side. Now, these ports are critical for facilitating maritime traffic through the canal. They handle all the cargo operations, the storage and the transshipment of vessels transiting this busy waterway. Therefore, Hutchinson Whampoa first entered Panama in 1997 when it secured a 25-year concession to manage the Balboa and Cristobal ports. Now, this move was a strategic expansion of its global port operations, and in 2021 the Panamanian government renewed this concession for another 25 years, cementing the company's role in the country's maritime infrastructure. I'm sure you're thinking, what is the importance of Balboa and Cristobal ports? Well, both ports serve as logistical lifelines for the canal. Here on the port side, the port of Balboa is a hub for vessels entering the canal or continuing along Pacific shipping routes. These ports ensure seamless operations by providing state-of-the-art facilities for cargo handling and transshipping, and support the canal's efficiency and Panama's role in global trade. Hutchinson's involvement underscores the importance of private enterprise in enhancing the canal's functionality. By managing these ports, the company complements the canal's operations, ensuring that vessels can offload, refuel, and reload cargo efficiently. This symbiotic relationship highlights how the canal isn't just about the locks and waterways. It's a complex ecosystem of ports, logistics, and global partnerships. So as we pass On our port side, you've got the port of Bodmin. Now, the port of Bodmin was originally a US naval base known as Bodmin Naval Station. After the US relinquished control in 1999, the area was redeveloped into the Panama International Terminal. This began operations in 2010. Now, the terminal itself and the port serves as a key hub for containerized cargo, with a capacity to handle up to 2 million TEUs. TEU standing for 20-foot equivalent units. So they handle up to 2 million TEUs. Those containers that you will hopefully see, and you can see right out the front of the ship. Those containers that carry everything that comes onto your table right in front of you. Now, a TEU is a standard measurement used in global shipping to describe the capacity of a container. 1 TEU is equivalent to a container that measures 20 feet long, 8 feet wide, and 8.5 feet high. It helps to quantify cargo volumes across ports and ships worldwide. And the port of Balboa, which is situated on our starboard side, is one of Panama's primary container ports. In 2021, it handled approximately 3.56 million TEUs, highlighting the significant role in regional and international trade. Balboa's strategic location and advanced infrastructure make it a critical part of Panama's logistics network, enabling efficient maritime trade between the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. Now, in addition to their critical role in direct shipping, both these ports serve as important transshipment points. Often cargo is offloaded from ships at these ports and then sent by rail across Panama. Now, this method is sometimes more cost effective than actually continuing the sea journey around the continent. Rail transport provides a quicker, more economical way to move goods, especially for the shipping lines who are looking to optimize logistics and costs while ensuring timely deliveries. Therefore, these ports not only facilitate direct shipping, but also streamline efficient land-based cargo movements across the isthmus. Now, for those of you on the port side, if you look out now, please. As we continue our journey, we're going to be passing various different vessels. I'll try to keep you updated on different vessels. This is a great opportunity for me to tell you about the first one. Probably one of the most common vessels that transit the Panama Canal are the container ships. Now, the container ships, these carry large metal containers. As I mentioned, you can see that they're stacked on top of each other. Each container is fixed. They will carry all the necessary. Therefore, for instance, this first one is the Dortmund Express. Now, this is operated by Hapag-Lloyd, a leading global shipping company. The vessel itself was built in 2012. And this vessel is designed for efficient and large-scale container transport. It's currently carrying 13,759 TEUs. That's 20-foot equivalent units. Now its length is 366 meters with a breadth of width of 48 meters. This particular vessel, particular container ship, has a capacity to handle substantial volumes of cargo, including refrigerated goods, carrying electronics, clothing, household goods, and industrial products as well. Now, this can weigh anything between 50,000 to 200,000 tons, of course depending on the size of the load. Throughout transit, you can see all the vessels on the water carrying out the sizes. Just to give you an idea of the various vessels transit. decks on the outside. If you look over to the side directly in front of the vessel at 11 o'clock, you're going to see that we're going to be passing brand new cockling locks. These are one of the newer and more impressive features of the Panama Canal. These newer locks opened in 2016, and they were part of the third set of locks. Now, the cockling locks were designed to handle larger ships known as the new Panamax vessels. These vessels were, of course, far too big to fit through the original locks that we're going to be going through, as these massive ships could be up to 1,200 feet long and 160 feet wide, which of course is significantly larger than which has those that go through the old locks. Now, what makes the cockling locks even more remarkable is their efficiency. They're not just bigger, they're also more sustainable. And these brand new locks have a design that incorporates water-saving basins, and these allow the locks to reuse water during the locking process. And this innovation saves millions of gallons of water with every transit, reducing the amount of fresh water needed to operate the locks. In fact, the new locks use about 60% less water compared to the older locks, making them far more eco-friendly. Therefore, the cockling locks are a key part of the canal's expansion project. They now allow the larger ships to move through the canal, increasing trade capacity, improving the overall efficiency of this vital waterway. Therefore, this makes the Panama Canal not only a feat of engineering, but also a modern marvel, and is designed to meet the demands of today's global shipping industry. Very shortly, folks, we will be heading towards the famous Miraflores locks. But the cockling locks, as we pass, mark a true turning point in the canal's history, now accommodating the largest ships ever to traverse this iconic waterway. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, those of you on the port side, and just to recap once again, we're diving into one of the most monumental feats of engineering in the world, that being the Panama Canal. But let's just focus, as we pass it, on the Panama Canal's newest achievement, that is of course the Neo-Panamax locks. Over to our port side, the Cocker-Lee locks. This was completed in 2016. Now these locks aren't just bigger, they're also smarter as well. So the Cocker-Lee locks measure an impressive 427 meters long and 55 meters wide, with a depth of 18.3 meters. Now that's big enough to accommodate ships that carry up to 14,000 containers. So imagine the cargo of thousands of trucks all in one vessel. And those giant locks have transformed the canal, making it a key player in global trade. And it's not just about the size. They also save water. The locks do use a water-saving basins, recycling water as ships pass through. And this innovation was crucial, especially in times of drought back in 2023, 2019. But it kept the canal efficient without wasting the precious resource of water. Therefore, these new or Neo-Panamax locks have opened up new routes for larger vessels, like those carrying LNG, which is liquefied natural gas. And they've also helped to lower shipping costs globally. Therefore, the ships are now saving time and money as they sail more directly between the Pacific and the Atlantic. Now, thanks to this expansion, the Panama Canal is now handling up to 36 to 40 ships daily, and the expansion continues to fuel the region's growth. So as we pass through, remember you're watching history in action as the Panama Canal paves the way for the future of global commerce. Just off to the port side, you can see those large three huge water basins. So once again, just to recap, what's happening up here on the bridge before we arrive at our first lock, that being the Miraflores locks. Now the chief pilot will instruct the ship's captain as to the speed and direction of the vessel. The chief pilot will also tell the tug operators, as well as is in constant communication with line handlers and the locomotive engineers ready for our arrival. And they're going to be giving us the assistance that we need to remain in contact for us to head through the first locks. Now the captain relies on the pilot's instructions which in turn he then relays to the crew members, who will perform the proper manoeuvres. Now, as the vessel approaches the first set of locks, another launch boat has just delivered our line handlers or the Marinos crew to the ship. Now, these line handlers board the vessel and prepare to receive the cables that are going to be attached to each locomotive, or the mules, that will be pulling the Gold Princess through each lock chamber. Now, a Panamax vessel, as we're known as, requires approximately 20 line handlers, 8 locomotives or mules, 4 at the bow and 4 at the stern. And that's 4 on the port side, 4 on the starboard side. We're also going to have tugboats pushing us from the stern to assist the vessel through each lock. Now, there will be one pilot who will remain on the bridge at all times, and he'll be moving between the wheel room and to either wing. So you'll see them out on the wings, no matter if you're on the port side or the starboard side, here on the bridge. He's going to be calling out instructions such as full ahead, rudder 10 degrees, ahead 1/3, midship. Now, the other pilot will be moving about the vessel from bow to stern, port to starboard, keeping watch on the ship's progress as we go through our canal transit. Once again, for the benefit of those guests who are just joining us, I'd like to give you a very warm welcome to today's commentary. Coming to you live from the bridge. We do hope you had a wonderful morning so far. We're now coming up to our first main event of the day as we are approaching Miraflores locks. So let me tell you a little bit about the various different locks. Now, the Panama Canal locks is a system that lifts ships up to 85 feet or 26 meters to the main elevation of the Panama Canal and the Gatun Lake. And then, as we proceed from here at the Pacific side, we're going to go then across and then down on the Atlantic side. Now, it has a total of 6 steps, 3 up and 3 down for a ship's passage. The total length of the lock structures, including the approach walls of what we're actually approaching now, is over 3 kilometers, nearly 2 miles. And they are one of the greatest engineering works ever to be undertaken at the time. When they actually originally opened back in 1914, there was no other concrete construction of comparable size that was undertaken until the Hoover Dam that was completed in the 1930s. Now, as we approach, there are 2 independent lanes of transition. Each lock is actually built double, so there is a 2-lane traffic system, as you can see directly ahead of us. The locks physically limit the maximum size of ships which can transit the canal. And we are known as a Panamax. Now, there are 3 sets of locks in the canal, a 2-step flight at Miraflores, which we're approaching now, a single flight at the Pedro Miguel, which is still here on the Pacific side, and on the Atlantic side is a triple flight, and that will be lowering the Coral Princess down to the Atlantic. Now, all 3 sets of locks are paired, and that is, there are 2 parallel flights of locks at each of the 3 lock sites. This is, in principle, allows ships to pass in opposite directions simultaneously. Now, the locks that we're going to be entering are 110 feet wide by 1,050 feet long, with a usable length of 1,000 feet. Now, these dimensions determine the maximum size of the ships which can use the canal, or the old locks. This size is known as Panamax. Now, the total lift, or the amount by which a ship is raised or lowered in the 3 steps of the Gatun locks, is 85 feet. The one we're approaching now, the lift of the 2-step Miraflores locks, is 54 feet or 16 meters. And the single step at the Pedro Miguel lock has a lift of 31 feet or 9.4 meters. Now, the lift at Miraflores actually varies due to the extreme tides on the Pacific side, which is between 43 feet, 13 meters at extreme high tide, and 64.5 feet or 20 meters at extreme low tide. And the tides on the Atlantic side, however, are very small. Now, to talk a little bit about the lock chambers that we're approaching, these lock chambers are massive concrete structures. The side walls are from 45 to 55 feet. That's 14 to 17 meters thick at the bases, and then towards the top, where there's less strength is required, they taper down in steps to 8 feet, 2.4 meters. Now, the center wall between the chambers is 60 feet or 18 meters thick, and it houses 3 long galleries which run the full length of the center wall. Now, the lowest of these is a drainage tunnel. Above this is the gallery for electrical cabling, and towards the top is a passageway which allows operators to gain access to the lock machinery. So you can actually physically walk and stay dry and go actually underneath the locks. Now, each lock chamber requires 26 million US gallons to fill it from the lowered position to raised. The same amount of water must be drained from each chamber to lower it again. Now embedded in the side and centre walls are 3 large water culverts, which are used to carry water from the lake into the chambers to raise them, and from each chamber down to the next or to the sea to lower them. Now these culverts range in size from 18 to 22 feet in diameter, large enough to actually accommodate a train. Cross culverts also branch off from the main culverts, and they run underneath the lock chambers and openings in the floors. Now there are 14 cross culverts in each chamber, each with 5 openings. 7 cross culverts from the side wall main culverts alternate from 7 from the centre wall culvert. So that's a lot of water going into those chambers. Now the water is moved by gravity and is controlled by huge valves in the culverts. Each cross culvert is independently controlled. Now a lock chamber can be filled in as little as 8 minutes. And there is significant turbulence in the lock chamber during this process. Now as we approach these gates, you'll see the gates which separate the chambers in front of us, and they separate each flight of locks. And they have to hold back a considerable weight of water. But they must be both reliable and strong enough to withstand accidents, as the failure of a gate could unleash a catastrophic flood of water downstream. Therefore, these gates are enormous size, ranging from 47 to 82 feet high and are 7 feet thick. The tallest gates right here at Miraflores, here on the Pacific side, and that is due to the large tidal range here. The heaviest gates weigh 662 tons, and the hinges themselves each weigh 16 tons, or 36,800 pounds. Now you'll notice that each gate has 2 leaves, 65 feet or 19.8 meters wide, which close to a V shape with the point upstream. Now this arrangement has the effect that the force of the water from the higher side pushes the ends of the gates together firmly. The gates can then only be opened when in the operating cycle and the water level on both sides is equal. Now the original gate machinery consisted of a huge drive wheel powered by an electric motor, to which was attached to a connecting rod, which in turn attached to the middle of the gate, and these mechanisms were replaced with hydraulic struts in January of 1998, after 84 years of service. Now would you believe it that the gates are actually hollow and buoyant, much like a hull of a ship, and are so well balanced that 2 25 horsepower motors are enough to move each gate leaf. If one motor fails, the other can still operate the gate at reduced speed. Now each chamber also contains a pair of auxiliary gates, which can be used to divide the chamber in 2. This is designed to allow for the transit of smaller vessels, such as canal tugs or sailboats, without using the full quantity of water. Now these were actually originally incorporated because the overwhelming majority of the ships in the early 1900s were less than 600 feet in length, and would therefore not need the full length of the lock chamber. Nowadays though, these gates are rarely used. Instead, small boats such as tugboats, tour boats and yachts are passed in groups. As you can see, we've approached the centre wall, and we're now going to be connecting up to our mules. Now from the outset, it was considered an important safety feature that ships were guided through the lock chambers by electric locomotives, known as mules, and they were named after the animals that traditionally used to pull barges. Now these mules are used for side-to-side and braking control in the rather narrow locks. They're also used for forward motion into and through the locks as they will glide and pull us along. The ship's engines will be running and we will be proceeding through at a speed of just over 1 knot. So as you can see, as we first approach the locks, we're guided towards the wall by our tugboats on the starboard side. We're then taken under control by the mules before we actually proceed into the lock. Now as we move forward, additional lines are taken to the mules on the other wall. And you can see on the starboard side, our mules are waiting for us so that we can connect our steel cables. And we will have a total of 8 mules gliding us through the locks. Now the mules themselves actually run on tracks with a broad gauge of 5 feet, to which they are geared traction, and it's all done by electric, which is powered by the water supply here at the Gatun Lake. Now each mule does have a powerful winch which is operated by the driver, and these are used to take the 2 cables in or actually glide them out. And this will keep the ship centered in the lock while moving it from chamber to chamber. Now with as little as 2 feet of space on each side of the ship, considerable skill is required on the part of the operators. With the smaller vessels, such as small tour boats or the tugboats or private yachts, these are actually taken as handline transits, where mooring lines to the lock walls are manual by line handlers of the ship. Now a little bit about the safety features. Now if you can imagine a failure of the lock gates, for example, which is caused by a runaway ship hitting the gate, could unleash a flood of water downstream. Therefore, extra safety against this is provided by doubling the gates at both ends of the upper chamber in each flight of locks. Hence, as you can see, there are 4 gates in each flight. Now, originally, the locks also featured chain barriers, which were stretched across the lock chambers to prevent the ship from running out of control and ramming a gate. Now these fender chains actually featured elaborate braking mechanisms which would allow a ship up to 10,000 tons to be safely stopped. However, given the precise control of the ships made possible by the mules today, it's very unlikely that these chains are ever required now. Especially as now many modern canal users are generally way over 60,000 tons. Therefore, given the expense of maintaining these chains, the actual chains were reduced in number in 1976 and finally removed in 1980, so we will no longer see the chains. Now, since all the equipment of the locks is operated electrically, the whole process of locking a ship up and down by control from a control room, which we'll see just up to our left in the center wall. That's where the control room is. Now, the controls were designed from the outset to maximize the chances of operator error. Therefore, and include a complete model of the locks in the control room with moving components which mirror the stats and the real lock gates and valves. In this way, the operator can see exactly what state the locks are in and the water valves are in. So as we do pass through the locks, do be sure to give our control operators a wave as we go. You'll see them on the port side. There's another safety feature as well. Mechanical interlocks are built into the controls to make sure that no component can actually be moved while another is in incorrect state. For example, opening the drain and fill valves of a lock chamber simultaneously is impossible. So let's talk a little bit about the construction of the locks. Now, the project of building the locks actually began with the first concrete being laid at Gatun Locks on August the 24th, 1909. Now, the locks at Gatun are built into a cutting neighbourhood hill bordering the lake, which required the excavation of 5 billion cubic yards, 4.8 billion cubic meters of material, which was pretty much mostly rock. Now, the locks themselves are made up of 2 billion cubic yards of 1.5 billion cubic meters of concrete. Now, here on the Pacific side, the locks were finished first. The single flight of Pedro Miguel was finished in 1890. Here in Miraflores was in May 1919. It was actually the sea-going tug Gatun, the original tug Gatun, the Atlantic entrance working tug that was used for hauling barges, had the honour of September 22, 1913 of making their first trial lockage of the Gatun locks. And I believe it actually went perfectly. But at that time, the actual blockage and the valves were all controlled manually, since the central control board was still not ready. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Miraflores Locks, our first locks on this incredible transit across the Panama Canal. So we're about to experience one of the most famous feats of engineering in the world, that being the Miraflores Locks. Now, these locks are the first step for ships entering the Panama Canal from the Pacific side, and they are a true symbol of human ingenuity and determination. So as you will see, as we approach the centre wall, when we first arrived, if you would have looked along the lock walls, you would have noticed our electronic locomotives, called the mules. Now, these mules are essential for safely guiding us, our ship, orbits us, keeping it perfectly centred and steady as we pass through. As you can see, typically it takes 4 to 8 mules per ship, depending on its size. And they would hold this ship into position using those sturdy steel cables. Now, the name mule still refers to the electric locomotives that perform the same job. Now, each mule costs around $2.3 million US. It's built by the Mitsubishi Corporation. And they are the latest in a long line of companies that have supplied these mules since the canal opened. Now, the Panama Canal Authority maintains a fleet of approximately 100 mules, which ensures a smooth operations every day. However, they clearly do need a lot more, as we were delayed in the entry of our first lots here, because the mules had to come from the end all the way back into the beginning. Now the mules themselves, they do operate on a rack and pinion system, which gives precise movement, preventing accidental bumps against the chamber walls. So this technology is a brilliant combination of old and new, and designed to keep every vessel safe and steady. You will also notice on the starboard side that we have a wonderful tugboats. They are the port's workhorses. And although they are very small and compact, which makes them easier to maneuver, they're also incredibly powerful. The engines on the smaller tugs produce between 750 and 3,000 horsepower. The engines on the larger tugs produce up to 25,000 horsepower. They definitely put that power to good use, don't they? They're going to be pushing or towing the vessel and helping to assist us all throughout the day. And without the help of these tugs, today's giant ships would never be able to make it across the Panama Canal. So as you can see, the gates have now opened and we'll be gliding ourselves into the first chamber. But just to give you a little bit about the history of the Miraflores locks. Now they've been in operation ever since 1914. The Miraflores locks have been playing a key role in linking the Pacific to the Atlantic Oceans. This obviously avoids making that grueling journey around South America. As I mentioned earlier, unlike the relatively stable tides of the Caribbean, the Pacific Ocean right here has tides that vary up to 20 feet or 6 meters between high and low tide. So this tidal difference poses a unique challenge for engineers. Therefore, to manage this, the Miraflores locks were designed to adjust water levels by 43 to 64 feet. That's 13 to 20 meters, of course, depending on tidal conditions, which is a pretty impressive feat, even by today's standards. Now, as we enter into our first lock chamber, give you once again a brief idea of the dimensions. Each chamber is 1,000 feet or 305 meters long. That's and 110 feet or 33.5 meters wide, and approximately 41 feet or 12.5 meters deep. Now these measurements fit the largest ships of the early 20th century, which are still referred to as Panamax vessels. Modern locks, which we pass, Crocodile, which were built in 2016, they can now accommodate even larger ships. The Miraflores locks continue to operate, handling a wide variety of vessels. Now once we enter the chamber, to give you a little bit of an idea of the water that's used per transit, each time a ship moves through a single chamber, 26 million gallons, that's 98 million litres of fresh water are required to raise or lower the vessel, and then up to the next water level. Once again, 26 million gallons of 98 million litres of fresh water. And that fresh water actually flows down by gravity from, of course, the nearby Gatun Lake, which is an entirely freshwater lake created during the canal's construction. Well, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations. The bow of the ship has just touched the beginning of our first chamber. We're currently moving at 0.4 knots. And if you're right here out on decks 10 and 11, do be sure to give our wonderful photography team a nice big wave there. You can see they're over there on the port side with their white hard hats. And you see Gabby and the guys throughout the day. To capture those magical moments. So do have your posters out nice and ready. Look out for those white hard hats on top of the team and taking pictures throughout the day. Also you can see where they're standing right there on the port side at the bow front of the ship. So just beside them is a stairwell. And once again that stairwell can take you down and actually underneath the rocks. Side to side. Right here on the bridge at this time, the pilot will be talking about companies of locomotives and our fantastically skilled operators. And he's advising them to take out the slack or to give up. As their mules propel us through into the first chamber. So once again, if you are on the port side, do be sure to be out on the balconies with your posters. We've got a wonderful photography team there, zooming those lenses in to capture those magical moments. So at this time, I'll tell you, so the port side, down the port side of the vessel. So as we slowly continue to glide into our first chamber, let's talk a bit about this incredible marble engineering innovation. Well, that's the Miraflores box. They're not just functional, they are legendary. They are the first set of blocks that we're going to be using today's transit. Now, these two chambers we're going to be entering offer a window into the heart of the canal operations. And they're going to have a century of engineering ingenuity. As I mentioned, we just ran past our first 90 gates and 1 gates. Now these gates are key heroes of this operation. They are massive, swinging steel structures that can weigh up to 700 tons. These gates create watertight steel enclosed, allowing the rock chambers to fill or empty with precision. Now these gates operate with incredible reliability. They're all managed by powerful electric motors and a backup system that keeps the canal moving, even during minor technical challenges. They also deliver the meters with tested time, so involved in the century. So as we enter into our first chamber, is a fun fact. The first ship actually through Panama Canal was actually an SS Anton. That was the first official ship to transit the canal on August 15, 1914. However, for those who want to be fancy ships and look at what are the start of the first chamber, do notice that on the left is the control tower. On the control tower, there's a base stack. The base stack will be around 13. The stack is around 14. The first official transit SS August 1914. That was part of the start of commercial operations. Now also, the Miraflores has actually also been a Hollywood star. It's featured in many documentaries, travel shows and movies, highlighting the canal's role among the 7 wonders of the modern world. this chamber. If you're looking over the sides of the ship, you will notice that the white markers on the walls are all in feet, and there's a distance from the front and the rear of the chambers, giving us the distance in 50 feet. So you'll notice now we're just coming up to 350 feet. In the front, and 700 feet in the chamber. As you can see, they're starting to wear a little bit, so you also see the yellow markers on the centre wall. Again, that is all in feet. So we're currently just 270 feet. Folks, don't forget to wave to all wonderful spectators there. Excited to see us here on the Coral Princess. I'm sure they're just as excited to see you again. Congratulations folks, you've made it into your first chamber, but I'll tell you what, how about for those of you out here on decks 10 and 11, if you're up there on deck 15, why not on the count of 3, just give those spectators a shot there, remember. On the count of 3, give them all a quick wave and they'll be snapping away. 1, 2, 3! You've just made their holidays. Okay, so for those of you on the starboard side now, you've got to notice that we're now up to our last 2 minutes at the rear of the vessel. So we're operating at 8 gills around the vessel. And we're now into our first chamber. So as we now into the first chamber, we're going to go closer. And these watertight lock doors are going to be closed by the lock master, which is actually located in the white building at the front of the ship on the far side. Now the lock master will then be opening valves to allow the flow of water from the existing lock chamber that you can see directly in front of us, which is directly above sea. Now the water itself is going to flow through underground pipes into the first chamber which we're in. There are 100 holes in the base of this new chamber we're in now. This is where the water will rush in, it will come up, and it will rise the gold princess up to the level of the second chamber. No pumps are used here. The entire operation will equalise the water levels between the locking chambers of the Panama Canal and this gravity. Water rise up to the same level. So therefore, when the water levels of the 2 adjacent chambers are equal, the water will slow down onto water bubbles. And once the water levels between the first and the second chamber are the same, it's closed by the lock master. Watertight lock doors between the first lock chamber and the second lock chamber are open subsequently. ladies and gentlemen, the great news is that our gates are now opening to allow us to move smoothly into the second chamber. So as we pass through Miraflores locks, you might be interested to know that for those of you who didn't get the opportunity yesterday to visit, just to our right we do have the Miraflores Visitor Centre. As you can see, this does offer an incredible vantage point for watching the transit ships go through the locks, as you can see there. And you'll find that the centre does provide a very interactive and educational experience about the Panama Canal's history, engineering and operation. The tower gets extremely busy. Right here on the right, the crew building is the old observation deck. And then as we head into our second chamber, also on the starboard side on the right hand side, there is all waiting there in anticipation to see waves is the newer observatory or observation deck. So do make sure as we do head in, give them away. I'm sure they've been waiting in anticipation to see a cruise ship come through. Just to show how friendly we are. Right here at the centre as well, you also get to see the operation of the lock chambers up close as well. You get to see the stunning views of the ships being raised or lowered. Now, one of the highlights of the Visitor Centre that I hope some of you got the opportunity to see, or maybe if you do return again, is the IMAX multi-screen theatre. This, of course, is very important video about the construction and, of course, the significance of the canal itself, and, of course, its impact on global trade. It is a wonderful place to come back to if anyone is interested in learning more about this incredible engineering behind the Panama Canal. So, heading back to the locks now. As you watch these locks in action, keep in mind that the water that's lifting and lowering the Coral Princess relies entirely on gravity. There are no pumps, which makes it truly awe-inspiring, doesn't it? And a pure example of natural forces and human engineering working together. The Miraflores locks are not only a gateway between oceans, but they're also a symbol of Panama's place in the global story of trade, travel, and human ingenuity. reiterate the Princess again is a complex class cruise ship. It was specifically designed to fit in these original Panama Canal locks. Together with the Princess, these are the only two vessels in the Princess fleet that go from the Miraflores hunting and the tourisms due to the whole successful journey through the Panama Canal. Now it's transit. But just to give you an idea, again, of our dimensions. Once again, the Princess's length is 965 feet, that's 294 feet. Has a width of being 106 feet, 32 meters, and a draft is 26 meters. The rocks we're going right now, we're at the Miraflores. Their chambers measure a length of 1,000 feet, 305 meters, with 33.5 meters. Given these dimensions, the Princess fits into a rock as minimum. While we all physically pull the ships that we have from shore, that's a cautionary transit as well as now here's a fun fact, the final fact as we exit today, the Miraflores locks have been operating for over 13 years. They continue to be part of our success. It's truly a civilization, ingenuity, and excellence. Now at this time we will now notice, for those who are on the starboard side, we've got our wonderful photo team. view right at the front of the ship now, you will notice that the handrails on the gates are now lowered. Those yellow handrails are lowered, meaning that the gates are now opening up, ready to allow us to proceed forward into the Miraflores Lake. But before we finally leave the Miraflores locks, I can tell you that the canal itself operates now for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Now it actually began operating, it didn't originally start operating 24 hours a day, but it started on May the 12th, 1963. And this transition was actually facilitated by the installation of fluorescent lighting at the locks and the Calibra Cut, which enabled night transits and significantly increasing the canal's capacity to handle vessels. So as you see around the locks, those large floodlights, which enable it to be open 24 hours a day. Now prior to this, the canal actually operated just during daylight hours, with transits typically occurring from sunrise to sunset. But the introduction of artificial lighting allowed for continuous operations, accommodating the growing demands of global maritime trade. So today, the Panama Canal does continue to operate around the clock, and it serves as a crucial for international shipping. Now they tell me that it handles on average about 38 to 40 vessels daily. We are currently 29 in the queue. Of course, that's including tankers, cargo ships, yachts, and of course cruise ships. So as we proceed on into the Miraflores Lakes, at this point we will be going along at about 2 to 3 knots. And this is where you'll see on the starboard side, our mules and locomotives. And we'll proceed via along the centre wall where we will be disconnected from our mules on the port side. So as we slowly proceed to the end of the central wall, away from Miraflores locks, those who are on the starboard side, if you look out, you'll see Fort Clayton. Now, Fort Clayton was a significant United States Army base. And it was established in the early 20th century, and it played a crucial role in the defence and the operation of the canal. Now, it actually was established in 1915, and that was by the United States military during their occupation of Panama. And the base was actually used to house troops and support the military operations in the region. Its main base served as the headquarters for the US Army South and housed various military units, including the 193rd Infantry Brigade and the 544th Military Police Battalion. It was also hosted the Southern Command Network, providing communication support for operations. Now, it was actually in 1977 that the United States and Panama signed the Triangles and the Carter Treaties, which outlined the transfer of control over the Panama Canal related military installations. As a result, Fort Clayton was scheduled for closure. The base officially closed in 1999, and this is where control was transferred to the Republic of Panama. This also marked the end of nearly a century of US military presence in the region. Now, after its closure, Fort Clayton was repurposed into the City of Knowledge, which is a technology and research park. And this initiative aims to foster innovation and collaboration amongst various institutions, including universities, research sectors, and businesses. Therefore, Fort Clayton's transformation from a military base to a centre for knowledge and innovation reflects Panama's evolving role in the global community and its commitment to preserving its rich history while embracing future opportunities.
Yeah. You can move it. Yeah, you can move it.
Hit somebody on the head down there.
No, I'm gonna
Pay for it, okay? Sorry. Just don't knock the camera over. That's a little more pricey than that overall.
Gentlemen, that was Miraflores locks. We're now released from the final set of wheels. This car a two-way system. This section of the lake plays a key role in the operation of the Panama Canal. This connects the two sets of locks. Therefore, the Miraflores lake is relatively smaller than the larger two lake. This little spans an area of about 1.5 square miles or 1 square kilometers. This area is generally around 20 to 30 feet, 6 to 9 meters. Just it's coming at the rate of 25. Now, the lake is primarily used as a buffer to store water. Used to fill the lock chambers. This allows the ships to be raised at sea level. It also serves as an important area for wildlife. There are wetlands species of fire, therefore, Miraflores Lake plays a crucial role in taking the water making it essential transition on several levels. Therefore, this is a great opportunity to decide whether to water
Same idea, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently cruising at a speed of 3.25 knots as we approach the rocks. As you can see, as we're coming up to the centre wall, there's a light breeze. The technology these days, they've advised us with their arrow pointed to the right-hand side, that's the east side of the east lane. So we'll be coming into the rocks of the east lane. You see the four mules of their anticipation. There are linesmen down at the mooring deck, ready to toss those lines. There are linesmen on the dock to catch, to connect to the steel cables, which will in turn be reached up back to our mooring deck and the linesmen on the ship. But now we are approaching San Miguel. My mistake, we're approaching Pedro Miguel.
He said a few wrong things. You don't have the same notation.
I heard you have a sound container.
There we go. For those of you who are on the port side, you will notice our wonderful, heroic oarsmen are now paddling out straight in the line of the Coral Princess, where they will be passing those lines up to the linesmen that are on the mooring deck. It takes a lot of courage for those poor little guys there in that little rowing boat to come straight in front of a massive vessel. But I've just been told by the pilot that this is the safest and most efficient way they can take those four lines and connect them from the mooring deck back to two connecting to the mules. I believe they used to try cannons and fire the cannons, but they used to cause more injury. So it's now better to have two little guys in a rowing boat to to row in front of the Coral Princess. So as you can see, they're now connected the two lines, which in turn will now be connected to the mules, which will pull up the steel cables. As you can see, those mighty gates are opening up, ready to receive us into the one and only chamber here at the Pedro Miguel Locks. It's a singular marvel of the Panama Canal. So welcome everybody. And it's one of the most fascinating stops on our journey through the Panama Canal, as it's the only single-step lock on the Pacific side. Pedro Miguel plays an integral role, of course, in connecting the Pacific Ocean to the interior waterways of this engineering wonder. Now, the Pedro Miguel locks have been in operation since 1914, standing as a testament to over a century of ingenuity and functionality. It's positioned just 1.4 miles or 2.3 kilometers north of the Miraflores locks. And the Pedro Miguel locks, they rise or lower vessels by approximately 30 feet, that's 9 meters, transitioning them smoothly between the Gaillard Cut, or the Calibre Cut, and the Miraflores Lake. Now, this single chamber lock is a unique feature of the canal, different from the multi-step systems of the Miraflores and the Gatun locks. look
so
over
quick
to the
tied
right-hand
up.
side, on the starboard side, and the front coming up at the top of the team.
Well, they don't catch it on the other side.
Just yourself.
Yeah, I haven't seen how they do that.
This is a great opportunity.
How they attach it to the ship.
So we are connected to our mules. Once again, these mules can be 35 tons. And as we know, it takes 8 to steer the Coral Princess through these various different chambers and locks. But just to keep things simple, only the pilot speaks. The mule drivers acknowledge in an ancient way when they ring their bells. So as we approach that center wall, the trip starts with the tugboats guiding the ship through the channel to the first line. Now, because the locks are a tight fit, the large steering cables are connected to the vessel, which are ahead of the lock gates that we're going to be going through very shortly. Now, these lock gates are 8 stories high, the largest ever made at the time of construction. They were simple and ingenious. And they're actually based on a Leonardo da Vinci design from the 15th century. With double doors sealed shut by water pressure, hydraulic systems controlled integration.
And so I wondered. But here I did see it. I didn't see it doing it, but I did see it.
Cleverly, the gates were built hollow. It only takes a small motor to move them. And the Coral Princess sails under its own power. The steering is another
I
matter.
got the same mirror.
Steel cables are now secured to the small locomotives on the mules.
I can see when I'm
by tightening or slackering the lines. It's a nerve-wracking job. Sometimes there is less than 1 foot between the hull and the concrete bridge. And then once the ship is in the chamber, the gates
Which
are
are good.
water races in millions of gallons, all of it coming from the lake. The canal, that in the Gatun, and all of it moved only by gravity. There's not a single water pump at all in the whole Panama Canal. The water, soft fluid, enough to run through our fingers, is so strong that it can lift a 70,000 ton ship 3 stories high in 10 minutes. The water even supplies all the electricity that powers the gates and valves and lights all around the canal. It comes from turbines with the original dam that made the canal possible. Now once we're in the lock chamber, the water in the lock chamber reaches the level of the water on the other side, and then the gates will open. We move up to Gatun. As I mentioned, about 38 to 40 ships a day pass through there. Now the ship's channel through the lake follows the ancient riverbed of the Chagres, which is on the north side. Now once we get through the Gatun Lake to the other side, the process works in reverse. We drop the Coral Princess down 3 locks to the Atlantic Ocean. Generally, the transit normally takes about 10 hours depending on the day and how busy the number of vessels. And again, this is accomplished by using the power of water. So in a way, the 10,000 people in the world here at the Panama Canal are really running a gigantic water management company. As I mentioned, it operates 24/7, 365 days a year. But the real business of it now is commercial shipping. 300 million tons of goods move through here every year. Tens of thousands of automobiles. The ingredients are made in half the food made. The materials used to build homes and offices. The entire world says it receives supplies of goods through.
mine.
Oh, so it's your, wow.
Yeah.
You have to bring that all with you. So are you filming constantly or? Oh, wow. Is this your first time?
Through the Panama Canal, yeah.
Yeah? So third.
Oh, wow.
And you know what? We're still getting up early. We still want to see it. It's so interesting.
Oh, it is.
It doesn't matter how many times you go through it.
It's always different.
It is. And I mean the first time we did it, we only did half. So we went into what is it, Gatun?
Gatun, yeah.
And then we turned around back out.
Okay.
And then the second time we went from the other way
Atlantic. Okay.
all the way through and then to Panama. That was the first time. And this time we're doing it the other way around. But my husband didn't want to fly over from Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
So we're going through it again.
Oh, you're doing the round trip?
Because it ends up in San Francisco.
Oh,
We
okay.
live in Vancouver.
Ah.
It's a short flight.
Yeah.
He doesn't want the long flights. So even though we fly business, he doesn't want the long flight.
That's how my
Plus,
dad is.
you gotta do a stop, right? It's not non-stop.
Yeah.
But 32 days it is. Nobody's waiting at home,
Yeah, well.
right? Well, he's not coming back, so I guess he cleaned.
If you watch it, we'll see how they attach.
I've seen them. I've seen them. I've seen it. That was.
You see how they attach it? No, somebody saw their attach. Hey, now you go.
I saw a little rope on that side, but I didn't see that. He wanted to go out.
back in the day, they probably. Back in the day, they probably would have been.
They open it this way?
Yeah.
Not like that.
Once again, the signs and sounds of the chimes of the mules tell us that the country may stop now. As a white shut. Once again, however, this time, just long before the turn. if you are lucky enough to be out on the port side, soaring very close to the bridge area, you'll see the black vulture now around the Panama Canal area. There are noticing a few species of vultures, notably the black vulture and the top vulture. As you can see, the black one, these birds are predominantly black with a distinctive white patch on the outside of their wings. They're commonly found in open areas, including roadsides and fields and urban environments. And they often congregate in large groups, especially around food sources, of course. They are opportunistic feeders, and they pretty much scavenging lots of different waste. Now the turkey vultures we get the opportunity to see have a dark brown to black body with featherless red head, resembling that of a turkey. You'll often see them soaring in the open areas. Now the turkey vultures are generally known for their keen sense of smell, because they also locate various different foods. But you often see them soaring in the sky, utilising thermal updrafts of light minerals. Both species do play a crucial role in the ecosystem around the Panama Canal, helping clean up the environment. Presence around the canal highlights the rich biodiversity, because the importance of vultures maintain an ecological balance.
Looks like a waterfall over there now. You have Niagara Falls over there.
Okay, so as you can see, if you're right here at the front of the vessel, gates on the Now once again, these mitre gates right here at the Pedro Miguel locks. And like all the other locks, they resist water pressure up to 40,000 pounds per square foot. That's 191,000 kilograms per square metre, making it not just functional, but very robust as well. And as we do depart the Pedro Miguel locks, remember it's also a very unique a single chamber lock, which is a rarity in our system. And again, a reflection of its design to balance efficiency and functionality. So as we make our Pedro Miguel locks, just take a moment to appreciate the seamless flow between natural forces, human intuition, and connections like amazing mighty gates. It's a fascinating step into our journey to greatest achievements. slowly proceed on a speed of just under 2 knots. For those of you on the starboard side, be sure to give them a wave. Our wonderful locals who are here to greet us. Probably the highlight of the day, coming out to see the Coral Princess. So congratulations folks, you've now made it up to 88.76 feet right to the top of the Gatun Lake.
Yeah. I was like, wait, she thought we were on schedule. I was like, no, we're supposed to have been out of there, but we're not around. Look at how high it is.
As we go along, I'll give you lots of information on the Centennial Bridge that's just up ahead of us. All about the Continental Divide and how it was made as we go through Gamboa and now into the Gatun Lake itself. Let's say a final farewell to our rules, our locomotives, and this
surprised the US didn't try to make animals there. Really would have thought they were going to try to keep control of this.
And to the Atlantic side.
He went out. Not even in the ball. No.
Boat train's been out the port side, and we'll see by the road coming the other side. It's actually going to go past the port side around behind the coal princess, come up to the starboard side where they will be picking up all the marinos, those linesmen. We have about 25 of those linesmen on board currently. They're going to be disembarking. We've still got our 2 remaining pilots who will be remaining with us. We're guiding us through the cut. Well, on the starboard side, you see that dangerous for people where the coal princess disembarking onto the boat. Very shortly, I'll do some information on the bridge.